I lifted the chipped ceramic mug to my lips, the metallic tang of Portland roast flooding my senses just as my phone buzzed against the oak tabletop. Steam curled around my hand in lazy spirals, mingling with the low hum of traffic rolling down Burnside Street. I glanced at the screen, unknown, no name, no number saved, and a single image preview that made my breath stutter. I set the mug down, its glaze clicking against the wood. The photo opened, Kelly and Ben, pressed close beneath towering pines, moonlight sketching their silhouettes in silver. Her hair spilled over his shoulder, and his hand clasped hers as though each touch were confession. The world tilted, and I tasted the acrid edge of panic in my mouth, like burnt rubber on the asphalt outside. My heart ratcheted its pace, but I forced my feet to stay planted. I stared at the image until the café's ambient soundtrack, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmurs of morning regulars, snapped back into focus. Stay calm, I told myself. You deserve context before you react. My thumb hovered over the screen, tempted to call, to demand an explanation. Instead, I tapped details and scrolled back through my sent messages, nothing from Kelly this early, nothing from anybody at all marked unknown. I picked up the mug again, but the coffee had gone cold. I warmed my fingertips around its handle, trying to quell the tremor in my chest. My eyes darted around the café, rows of succulents on the windowsill, the barista wiping down the counter, a student hunched over a textbook in the corner. The mundane scene felt surreal, as if I'd stumbled toward a funhouse mirror that reflected a future I had never imagined. My mind raced backward. Yesterday morning, Kelly kissed me goodbye, slipped on her green volunteer t-shirt, and promised to be home by 6. She'd texted later that night from the environmental center, "Great day planting willows. I'll see you tomorrow." Nothing odd in those words. Nothing to hint at stolen moments in the woods. I took a steadying breath, tasting the coppery aftertaste of denial. I scrolled through our shared calendar, cleanup events, farmers market shifts, weekend hikes with the twins. Every entry lined up perfectly, on paper. But this photograph hung between us, a dark stain at the center of our perfect schedule. My hand tightened around the mug. I felt the rough chip at its rim, a flaw I'd ignored during 1,000 coffees. Now the imperfection felt symbolic, like the first crack in a painted wall. I closed my eyes. We built this life together, I thought. But you can't fix what you can't see. I replayed Kelly's smile when she described the movement's new volunteer coordinator, Ben, a friendly guy who loved trail running in old-growth forests. I'd been proud of her passion for preserving nature. I never expected those woods to become a hiding place. With deliberate calm, I set my phone face up on the table and pushed back my chair. I needed more than a single photo to understand what was happening. But I also knew that context wouldn't materialize on its own. I had to gather facts, resist assumptions, and, if necessary, confront the truth without letting my emotions hijack the conversation. I drained the coffee in one measured swallow, letting the bitter warmth steel my resolve. Outside, a delivery van rumbled by, its brakes squealing softly. When I stood, the table wobbled slightly, as though uncertain of my departure. I tucked the mug under my arm, picked up my phone, and slipped out the cafe door into the brisk Portland air. The traffic's hum enveloped me again, but this time it felt like a metronome marking the first beat of something new. I buttoned my coat and squared my shoulders. Whatever lay ahead, I would meet it with clear eyes and a calm mind. Because if betrayal had found its way into my life like a dark seed beneath the cedar canopy, I would need to uproot every hidden truth before I could breathe freely again. The days after that cafe moment felt like walking through fog. Every routine task, making breakfast for our twins, loading the dishwasher, tying my shoes, played out with an undercurrent of disquiet. I found myself replaying that photograph in my mind, searching for hidden details, the curve of Kelly's shoulder, the way Ben's forearm brushed her waist, the shadows of leaves overhead. Each time I closed my eyes, the image lingered, demanding answers I wasn't yet ready to seek. Late that evening, while the girls watched cartoons, I slipped into our bedroom and flipped on the lamp. On the nightstand lay Kelly's phone. She'd forgotten it after texting me her goodnight. My chest tightened as I picked it up. A quick pin entry later, I scrolled through her recent messages. Most were movement-related logistics, need extra gloves. Can't make Friday's cleanup, until I hit a string of texts from Ben, great work today, meet me at the creek after dark, and I need to tell you something. The timestamps were telling, 9:47 p.m., 10:15 p.m., 11:02 p.m. I swallowed hard and bookmarked that last message before setting the phone back. My thumb hovered over the lock screen, but I forced myself away. I didn't want to feel like a thief in my own home, rifling through her private life. I just needed to know. I walked into the hallway and pressed my forehead against the cool paint, listening to the quiet breathing of our daughters. The house felt too big without Kelly's soft footsteps or the hum of her bedtime lullaby. I closed my eyes and let memories wash over me. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, her grin when she found heirloom tomatoes, the way she'd hum a tune while she rinsed vegetables in our tiny kitchen sink, the first night we moved into this house, our arms aching from lifting boxes but hearts full of hope. Those recollections burned bright against the encroaching shadows of doubt. Over the next week, I began a quiet inventory of our life together. I opened our joint bank statements online and downloaded 3 months' worth of transactions. I sorted them into categories: groceries, utilities, volunteer expenses, but one line in the environmental movement column jumped out: a series of cash withdrawals from ATMs near Forest Park, each just before dusk. I noted their dates and amounts. Then I cross-referenced those dates with Kelly's calendar entries, evening meeting, or trail prep. There was always a plausible explanation. Until I placed them next to the timestamps of Ben's texts. My brother, Aaron, called that Saturday. He was checking in on the twins so I could attend a local fundraiser lunch. I thanked him and admitted I'd been distracted. "Kelly's doing great work," I said, forcing my voice steady. He offered to take the girls for a quick park visit so I could clear my head. I drove to Laurelhurst Park and sat by the pond, watching the ripples drift across the water. I let my mind sift through the clues, the photograph, the texts, the ATM withdrawals, piecing together a pattern I wished didn't exist. That night, I met my oldest friend, Dana, at our usual brewpub. Over amber ale, I hesitated before telling her what I'd discovered. "I found texts from someone named Ben," I said finally, sliding my phone across the table to show the messages. She read them and sighed. "This is more than gardening chit-chat," she said. I nodded. "I know. But I want facts, not assumptions." Dana took my hand. "You're doing the right thing. You'll find the truth." Encouraged, I purchased 2 small trail cameras online, compact, battery-powered units with motion sensors and night vision. When they arrived, I enlisted Aaron's help to install one by the creek where Kelly often volunteered and another at the edge of our backyard, hidden among the rhododendrons. That night, under a moonless sky, I reviewed the first batch of footage: flickers of wildlife, a raccoon rifling through a trash bin, and, at 10:03 p.m., Kelly stepping out of the woods, brushing leaves from her hair, her face turned as if looking back. My pulse pounded as I watched her silhouette vanish around the corner. I saved the clip, labeled it Forest Park, 10:03 p.m., and backed it up to an encrypted folder. Then I sat at my desk, head in hands, and felt grief and anger swirl together. But amid the pain, I noticed something, a calm focus settling over me, as though each new piece of evidence crystallized my purpose. I wasn't reacting with wild emotion, I was gathering facts, building a case, preparing to confront the truth with clear eyes. In the days that followed, I kept close to our daughters, reading them stories and tucking them in with extra kisses. I didn't want my investigation to overshadow their world. Yet every morning, after their school bus pulled away, I dove back into my files, bank logs, screenshots of texts, camera footage. I printed them, arranged them neatly in manila folders labeled by date. I wrote notes in the margins: verify this meeting location, check Ben's volunteer schedule, ask Clara about weekend chat. My desk, once cluttered with bills and old mail, transformed into a command center for quiet vengeance. One afternoon, I reached out to Clara, Kelly's childhood friend. Under the guise of catching up, I asked about any recent changes in Kelly's volunteer schedule. Clara hesitated, then admitted Kelly had mentioned late-night excursions into the woods to talk about life. She hadn't thought it suspicious at the time, just 2 friends sharing dark confessions under the pine canopy. I thanked her and had her jot down the date and her recollection in an email I printed and filed. By the end of part 2, I had enough threads to weave an unignorable tapestry: the photograph, the texts, the ATM withdrawals, the secret camera footage, and Clara's note. Each clue no longer felt isolated. Together, they formed a bridge from my denial to the confrontation that lay ahead. And though my heart ached with betrayal, beneath it pulsed a steady resolve: I would see this through, step by deliberate step, until every hidden truth lay exposed in the light. I arrived at Richard and Solis Law just after lunch, the chipped ceramic mug from my first morning of doubt tucked under my arm. It felt fitting to carry that emblem of broken trust into the sterile calm of the attorney's office. I set it on the polished conference table beside a neat stack of printed bank statements, camera logs, and the last screenshot of Ben's midnight text. Across from me, Ellen Solis offered a reassuring nod and poured water into a glass before handing me a retainer agreement. Signing felt surprisingly ceremonial. Each signature anchored a step away from confusion and toward concrete action. Ellen leaned forward, tapping her pen against the contract's fine print. "Once we file, the court will expect preservation of all evidence," she said. "We'll need notarized copies of your bank statements, witness affidavits, and any surveillance you gather. We'll draft your initial custody proposal and sliding scale support outline, then prepare for mediation." Her voice was precise, methodical, exactly what I needed. I emptied the glass, then retrieved my bulging manila folder. Under Ellen's guidance, I organized its contents into 3 subfolders: financial records, communications, and surveillance. I handed her the communications packet first, Ben's texts, the unknown number photo, Kelly's calendar entries with my annotations, and watched her flip through each red-inked note. Next came the bank statements I'd downloaded and printed, every ATM withdrawal near Forest Park, every environmental movement fee. She highlighted a few lines with a green marker and slipped them into the financial records sleeve. Finally, I offered the surveillance stills and camera timestamps, each labeled and backed up on an encrypted flash drive. Ellen tapped her tablet. "Great work compiling this. Let's get these notarized and filed today, then set a meeting with the mediator for next week. In the meantime, keep collecting new evidence. I'll draft a preliminary petition by tomorrow." I exhaled, tension slipping away in measured relief. My first stop was the notary down the hall. I handed over the packets, the official applied her seal to each document with a practiced thud. The rubber stamp's echo reminded me of the café's metal mug, of that jolt when betrayal first surfaced. Each imprint felt like reclaiming a piece of authority over a life that had spun out of my control. With notarized packets in hand and a new sense of direction burning behind my ribs, I returned home determined to fortify my case further. Back in our kitchen, I cleared the table and spread out the documents again. The chipped mug held a collection of pens now, its cracked rim a silent witness to every plan I sketched on legal pads. I drafted the custody proposal, 50-50 weekends, alternating holidays, detailed pickup and drop-off logistics. Beside each schedule bullet, I noted the reasons: my proximity to both schools, the tentatively booked summer camp scheduled on my weekend so she wouldn't need to scramble for childcare, our parents' availability to fill in when work conflicted. I formatted it like a blueprint, using bullet points and bold headings to make it easy to navigate. Late that afternoon, my brother Aaron arrived with 2 trail cameras in a small box. He and I had added the first pair over the creek weeks ago, now we needed coverage at home. Aaron carried one unit to the front porch, cleverly mounting it inside a potted fern. I stationed the other above the basement window, tucking its lens behind an old welcome mat. Warm dusk light filtered through the rhododendrons as we tested their motion sensors. Each green LED blinked to life, recording our movements in crisp, time-stamped video. By the time Aaron left, the underbrush and brick facade of our home were fully monitored, and I felt the first bloom of quiet confidence. This was no longer conjecture but documented fact. The next day, I met longtime friend Dana for coffee at the bookstore café downtown. She'd been with me through every misstep and triumph, and I needed her counsel on tone. Over dark roast, I laid out the custody proposal and asset division outline. She listened, nodding seriously as I detailed my rationale for the home's exclusive possession pending final decree, and the split of our joint investment account. When I finished, she tapped the table. "You've been fair and thorough," she said. "That calm, factual approach will serve you well in mediation. Anger has its place, but you're stronger when you focus on clear evidence." Her words reinforced the strategy one was building: purpose over passion, evidence over emotion. That evening, I drafted emails requesting official transaction histories from our bank and the environmental center where Kelly volunteered. I attached the notarized statements and asked for confirmation of any records beyond what I'd downloaded. Customer service replies began to trickle in within hours, detailed spreadsheets of volunteer sign-ins, timestamps of entry and exit at the center, even notes on equipment checkouts under Kelly's name. I labeled these supplemental financial records and filed them accordingly. In the early hours, after the twins were tucked in, I reviewed new footage from the trail cameras. The basement unit had captured a silent figure slipping around the corner at 11:15 p.m., hair long and loose, the outline unmistakably Kelly's. Above the frame, a small timestamp flickered. I exported the clip, inserted a file label reading "Home, 11:15 p.m., 04/22, and saved a duplicate to the cloud. My final task for the night was to consolidate everything into a single master folder on my encrypted drive, then to rest, knowing tomorrow would bring Ellen's draft petition and the first steps toward mediation. By the end of the week, I had a sealed packet ready for filing, notarized originals, witness affidavits from Clara and Aaron, video clips on flash drives, transaction records, and the custody proposal. I delivered it in person to Ellen, watched as she stamped the court filing, and finally let myself feel the shift from stunned husband to legal advocate. When I returned home, I placed the chipped mug back on the desk, its familiar flaw now a testament to my journey. I sat across from it, hands folded, and let the quiet settle. My heart still ached, but beneath the grief was a bedrock resolve. Each document notarized, each camera installed, each meeting held had forged a path forward. I was no longer adrift in doubt, I had a map, and I knew exactly where to go next. And for the first time since that morning at the café, I felt certain I would reach the other side. I waited until the late afternoon light had softened into a pale Oregon gold before inviting Kelly into our living room. The space was intentionally bare, family photos and throw pillows removed, the scent of lavender minimalist soy candle flickering on the coffee table. There, I'd placed the wedding photo, the two of us smiling beneath a stand of Douglas firs, our arms wrapped tight, hope in our eyes. When Kelly stepped inside, her gaze landed on that image first, curiosity flickering across her face. "Thomas, what's all this?" she asked, voice steady but cautious. I stood beside the coffee table, arms folded, and let a moment pass so she could absorb the scene. "I collected everything," I said quietly. I nodded toward the photo. "This was us, at our happiest. I want to show you how I've put the pieces back together." Her shoulders tensed. She hesitated, then sank onto the couch. I sat opposite her, fingertips pressing the edge of the framed picture. "Do you remember that day in Forest Park?" I asked. "You said the woods felt sacred, like a place where anything could be true." She swallowed. "I do." I slid the first photograph across the table, Kelly and Ben beneath a moonlit canopy, her hand in his. "This is what you meant by true," I said. "A confession in the dark." Her eyes widened at the sight of her own silhouette, hair catching the faint silver light. She drew in a breath, but I continued before she could speak. "I have your phone logs showing your texts to him, timestamps at 9:47, 10:15, 11:02. I have the ATM withdrawals near the park every dusk for the last 2 months. And here," I tapped the wedding photo, "I have this image you once cherished. It's been sitting here while you built a hidden life." Kelly looked down, tears threatening. "Thomas, I didn't plan for it to go this far," she whispered. Her words wavered. I reached into the manila folder at my side and pulled out the custody proposal. I unfolded it deliberately, placing it in front of her. "I drafted this," I said. 50-50 weekends, alternating holidays, clear pickup and drop-off. Our twins deserve transparency and routine, not secrecy." She traced the lines with her fingertip, voice trembling. You've thought of everything." "I've had to," I replied, voice calm. Every line needed a response. Every secret needed an answer. I paused, watching her face in the soft light. "I'm not angry that you found comfort in someone else. I'm angry that you didn't trust me with your pain. That you let our life fracture without a word." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She stood and reached for the folder, but I set a hand on it, stilling her motion. "Let me finish," I said gently. I picked up the surveillance still from our porch camera, Kelly slipping out at 11:15 p.m. under the welcome mat. "I watched you leave, night after night, not because I wanted to catch you, but because I needed to understand." Her shoulders shook. "I was lost," she confessed. "Ben listened when I didn't know who I was anymore." I nodded slowly, compassion flickering in my eyes. "I get that. But our children needed their mother. I needed my wife. I wish you'd come to me first. She looked up, raw regret in her expression. I'm so sorry, Thomas. I stood and picked up the wedding photo, turning it over in my hands. The image of our joyful past felt fragile, like glass. I placed it gently into the folder. I hope you mean that someday, I said. For now, we move forward with clarity. We owe them that. Kelly sank back onto the couch, voice a whisper, what happens next? I straightened the ashtray, now repurposed as a pen holder, on the coffee table and folded my hands in my lap. Tomorrow, we meet with Ellen. We finalize the agreement. Then we tell the girls together, using the words our therapist suggested. I offered her a small, sad smile. This is how we reclaim our family's truth, in daylight, together, even if apart. In the hush that followed, the last of the afternoon light slipped from the windows, and I realized the confrontation was over. The evidence was laid bare, the stakes irrevocable, and my resolve intact. As Kelly sat in quiet remorse beside the remnants of our life together, I felt the final weight of uncertainty lift. This was the climax, and now I could guide us toward resolution. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains as I carried the thick packet of finalized paperwork into Ellen's office. She spread the documents across her desk, the decree granting me exclusive use of our home until the twins finished the school year, a 50-50 custody schedule with clear handoff times at school gates, and a fair split of our savings and retirement accounts, with alimony calculated to maintain both our standards of living. My signature glided across each line without hesitation. When Ellen stamped the final page, a quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. Back home, I placed the stamped decree and agreement into the legal, closed binder, sliding it onto the shelf beside the chipped café mug now serving as my pen holder. That mug had become the ledger of my journey, from the first ember of betrayal to this moment of resolution, and its cracked rim seemed to glow with a new significance, a symbol of transformation. Later that afternoon, I collected the twins from school and handed them each a slice of their favorite chocolate cake, Kelly's recipe, before settling into our living room for a spontaneous dance party. As we twirled beneath the fading light, I caught sight of the old wedding photo on the mantel, our young faces framed by Douglas firs, laughter frozen in time. I reached out and gently lifted it, turning it face down before placing it on the side table. It felt right to honor that past by making room for what was yet to come. Over the next week, I reconnected with the guitar that had gathered dust in the corner. Each evening, I strummed familiar chords, letting music fill the quiet spaces that once resounded with questions. My longtime friend Dana dropped by one night with cookies and an invitation to join a local hiking group, an echo of Kelly's volunteer treks, but this time shared with friends who knew my story. Together, we walked forested trails at dawn, the damp earth beneath our boots offering a grounded sense of renewal. At work, I looked up and realized colleagues had begun seeking me out for advice on managing complex projects. I started mentoring a junior associate, teaching her how to organize research folders, prepare for key meetings, and maintain composure under pressure. Each time I guided her through a spreadsheet or simulated a presentation, I remembered the methodical steps I'd taken to rebuild my own life, and I felt a new purpose in passing that lesson on. That weekend, I hosted my first podcast episode for Reclaimed Roots, sharing my story in measured detail, the cafe photograph, the trail camera footage, the legal strategy, and the quiet resolve that carried me through. The chipped mug sat in view on my desk, next to a laptop displaying the blog's homepage. With each listener who reached out to thank me for a clear roadmap through betrayal, I sensed the healing power of turning pain into guidance. On a Sunday morning, the twins and I prepared breakfast together, pancakes and fresh berries, just as Kelly once did. We set the table and laughed over spilled syrup. Later, I snapped a photo of us gathered around the mug now emblazoned with the words, "New Beginnings," I'd added in permanent marker. I uploaded the picture to our family album, captioned simply, "Here's to the next chapter." As dusk settled, I sat on the porch with my guitar, the chipped mug resting at my side. The wedding photo rested on the mantel inside, face down but preserved. I closed my eyes, drew in the scent of pine and coffee, and felt the steady rhythm of life's renewal. Betrayal had forced me to uproot hidden truths, but in their place I had nurtured resilience, justice, and a deeper sense of self. And now, with each chord I played, each podcast recorded, and each mentoring session held, I affirmed the belief that even from shattered trust, a stronger, wiser life can grow.